Blessings and Pan-African love, everyone, and welcome to Roots of Africa, presented by AIDO Network International. Today, we are continuing our series on unpacking the tears of love, royal pilgrimage to the Americas and the Caribbean. As you know, AIDO Network International does everything possible to find personalities to share with you their views and advice on the revival of Africa's traditional cultural values and best practices in a world which tends to minimize and ignore their importance. I'm your hostess, Her Royal Highness Queen Aminata, and I will be joined today by my co-host, His Excellency Ambassador Namboka, who is the Vice President of AIDO Network International and Vice President of the African Open University in Switzerland. Welcome to the show, Your Excellency Ambassador Namboka.
Thank you, Your Highness Queen Aminata, for having me.
Thank you. Today, we have the pleasure and honor to welcome His Excellency Dorbrene E. who is the chairperson of the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Committee and one of 3 vice presidents of the Caricom Reparations Commission. He is a graduate of the University of the West Indies and 2 North American universities. His Excellency Omar is a cultural worker, playwright, lyricist, director, and producer of both theater and music. His most recent award is from the President of St. Martin Book Fair Award, presented to individuals and institutions. Personally, he is a management consultant offering services in various sectors nationally and regionally. Welcome to Roots of Africa, Your Excellency Omar.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Queen Aminata, and it's also a pleasure of being with Ambassador Namboka again. We have been seeing one another quite often over the last couple of weeks.
So true.
So, His Excellency Omar, about half a year ago, you discovered AIDO Network International and heard about this grand project, Tears of Love, aiming to take African kings and queens across the Atlantic Ocean in order to go and meet their lost brothers and sisters who are descendants from Africa's stolen people, taken away from their helpless families 400 years ago. What do you make of this?
The reconnection is so important. These reconnections are things that many of us here in this region have looked forward to, have been working very, very hard towards making them happen. My introduction meeting with AIDO, I think, crystallized many of the efforts and many of the dreams that we have had of making those, not only making those connections in a superficial manner, but making them real and important to the lives of people on the continent and to the lives of persons here in the Caribbean. And so, yes, we really look forward to this tour, the Tears of Love, of AIDO and royalty, African traditional royalty, visiting us here in the Caribbean, and also meeting in St. Louis in Missouri late in August.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Ambassador Namboka, as the Vice President of AIDO, do you have anything to add to what His Excellency Dorbrene just informed us of?
Well, first and foremost, I would fail to be African if I didn't acknowledge and appreciate what words he pronounces of longing, of having been looking to a day when this kind of reunion of families, of the people of the same family, Africa. I feel very touched by his own view. But I may want to ask a small question after expressing my appreciation for the African I hear him to speak. Perhaps, Ambassador Dorbrene Mardi, in the past you've personally visited the African continent, maybe. What if you did was real or not real about Africa against what you grow up as a child of African descent in the diaspora? Its people, did you find that people are what they have been given you to be? And perhaps would you want more people from your country, Antigua and Barbuda, to know more about Africa?
Oh, certainly. I have been. I've had the good fortune of visiting the continent. I've been to Kenya, I've been to Cameroon, I've been to Senegal. I've spent a short period in Morocco, also. For me, a number of things would strike you. One is the vastness of the continent. I do not think that those of us on the small islands in the Caribbean understand what it is for driving from one city in Senegal, for example, and driving for 6 hours to get to another point. Just that sense of the vastness. I think it's important that we communicate that. And within this vastness, we must then begin to talk about the diversities of culture, the differences in people, the differences in dance, in music, in worship, in agricultural production. This vastness, I think it's important that we communicate this. I think also that we need to understand the similarity of our colonial experience. That it became clear to me that we were exposed to some of the very same influences about the difficulties of skin color, what being black is. This horrible color according to the colonial governance methods, those that came through education, those that came through religion, and the denigration of the African personality, to understand that those persons on the continent and those of us here in the Caribbean, of course, those of us in North America, were exposed to the same experiences. I think also, just in terms of driving and seeing the names of businesses and the signposts, etc., to understand that we are also suffering from the same Euro-American exploitation of our economies, of our lands, of our waters. The names are the same. I mean, the images are the same. And so there is a lot, I think, that we can unpack out of those types of experiences of visiting the continent.
Thank you for that, Your Excellency, Omar Day. And it's true indeed that people that live outside of the continent really don't understand exactly how large the continent is, especially when you look at the maps and the globes that they give us. It's shown as a very small continent when in fact it's the second largest continent on the planet. And we wouldn't know that by looking at the misinformation that we're given. And it's also true what you spoke about the colorism issues that we suffer across the diaspora and on the continent with skin bleaching. We're taught to believe that lighter is better, and we're taught to devalue our God-given melanin, which is actually a very powerful thing. So I'm happy to hear that you're educating our audience on that very topic, because it's very passionate to me about it as a person of a darker hue, that we don't embrace these European standards of beauty that have been placed upon us, because it's killing our people globally, actually, with these products that we put on our skin that gets absorbed into our bodies. So thank you for that. Now, Your Excellency Omar Day, please tell us about the upcoming emancipation celebrations, which are planned in Antigua later this month.
Yes, maybe a little background might also help, in that we grew up, I mean, people of my age were not experienced to the concept and the importance of an Emancipation Day holiday. Emancipation took place here across the Caribbean, across the British Caribbean, British-speaking Caribbean, 1834 on the 1st of August. And the 1st of August became an important holiday, an important celebration for the generation immediately after emancipation. And along the way, along the years. It sort of disappeared as an important day for emancipation. It remained a holiday, but it became a holiday, an August holiday, a summer holiday, a day for picnicking and that type of thing. And the emancipation aspect of it got lost. Over, I would say, the last 30, 40 years across this region, starting maybe more in Trinidad and Tobago, as far back as 1985, Trinidad and Tobago declared that day as a national holiday, which is the first of our independent countries to have done that. Since then, it has been declared a national holiday in many of our other countries. Unfortunately, Antigua and Barbuda is not one, because in the meanwhile, the carnival celebrations were placed in that particular spot, so that our carnival runs through the last week of July into the first week of August and generally encompasses Emancipation Day. About 15, 20 years ago, a group of us here in Antigua decided that this was not a good way to be celebrating our emancipation, for understanding the importance of that day in the lives of Caribbean people, the lives of African people, that we needed to take stock of it. It was not the bacchanal of the carnival that we were interested in, but essentially the celebratory and commemorative aspects of that particular day. And so we have initiated here in Antigua and a series of emancipation activities in terms of poetry, in terms of fashion, in terms of dress, in terms of celebrations, music and dance, etc. And the highlight of our celebrations is what we refer to as our watch night gathering. Watch night takes place on the evening of the 31st of July. So we start about 8, 9 o'clock and go right through into Emancipation Day. And so we have, speeches, there's music, there's dance, there's poetry, and we're hoping for this year that we will have a representative of AIDO, at least a representative of AIDO, delivering an important address to the gathering, to our watch night gathering. Emancipation Day itself, August 1st, tends to be more media than anything else, that we make the media rounds talking about the importance of emancipation. Admittedly, we continue to struggle against the strength of the government-supported carnival. And this is the battle we have of attempting to break through that. I just came off the radio yesterday morning, again making a national plea for Emancipation Day to be made a national holiday here in Antigua. And I hope if we have royalty coming here, and if we do have AIDO representatives coming here, that they will also help us to make that plea, to understand the importance of what it is. And so we're ready. We're ready for watch night. It's just about 2 weeks away. The artists are in place. The venue is about ready. The promotion has started. And we really look forward to welcoming our guests here during that period.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what kind of activities are involved in the celebration of emancipation? Because I've learned something from you just here today. I always thought that carnival was emancipation. I didn't know that they were two separate things. So can you just elaborate, just for the listening audience to know, as well as for myself, what's the difference between the two, and what are some of the celebrations that will take place that highlight the actual independence of the country?
The carnival. The carnival, how should I describe this? There are calypso, there are competitions, steel band competitions, there are calypso competitions, there are masquerade competitions, traditional masks, and of course the modern interpretations of all sorts of things in masquerade form. There are beauty pageants. And so the carnival tends to be a celebration of culture itself, and the understanding that it is the same as emancipation, I think, is unreal. It is promoted in many instances as a recognition of emancipation, but there is absolutely there's nothing in the carnival program except that the culture of the country is celebrated, but it is not celebrated, let's say, in particular reference to emancipation. And so there is quite a difference between both celebrations. We tend to be in emancipation to be a lot more commemorative, a lot more historical, a lot more understanding of social and political importance of that date of what emancipation was to our people, freedom after hundreds of years of enslavement. It's just that both activities take place at the same time, yes, and there is some, I think, misrepresentation in historical accounts that they are one and the same thing, but they're not.
Let's take a commercial break here and watch a short video clip.
Okay.
AIDO International Development Organization, AIDO Network. AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO. We are AIDOers. We are AIDOers. The voice of the voiceless to promote unity and social change. A platform for dialogue. AIDO, a home for cultural heritage. AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO.
Esomata nepepe etofolo sinono showok. Esomata ka AIDO Atecare International Development Organization AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO. We are AIDOers. AIDO. We are AIDOers.
Rise up, everyone, from everywhere. Come, let's support AIDO. Uganda,
Yoganor,
Kenya,
Jambusana,
Ghana,
Aquaba,
Jamaica, United Kingdom, and South Africa. AIDO.
Welcome back to Roots of Africa, presented by AIDO Network International. Before our break, His Excellency Omar shared with us a lot of information about the Caribbean island of Antigua and its upcoming emancipation celebrations. We also learned the difference between Carnival and Independence Day, which are celebrated at the same time but are not necessarily the same thing. So this brings us to you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Namboka. We have just seen a short clip of some of the royals AIDO is planning on sending to the Caribbean celebrations in Antigua this year. And as Vice President of AIDO, please share with us what AIDO hopes to accomplish in Antigua with this royal visit.
Thank you very much, Queen Aminata. Well, as Ambassador Dorbrene E has explained, there is a commonality. When he traveled across the continent, he was in Kenya. He also went up to Morocco and Senegal. That is touching the northern tip, eastern tip, and western tip. He did go to South Africa, and I've been to South Africa, so I had to complete the image. So Africa is really a vast landmass. And we had our people taken from the continent in small numbers and taken away. And those of the diaspora don't know from where they came on the continent. AIDO has decided to take kings and queens and other personalities, basically the cream of the cream from the African continent today, but we take kings and queens because they are the relics, they are the traces of the ancient African management, governance, religious standards and norms and practices. So what we hope to achieve with this, first, is to restore a sense of belonging to a noble society. The children of Africa in the diaspora need to see that Africa had kings and emperors. And we can only do this by having them travel across the Atlantic by air, of course, not like the ancient, unfortunate sisters and mothers and fathers who are stolen away. No, we want to take these present royal personalities and some important state representatives to come to Antigua and meet the Antigua population and hug them. To see Africans as royals, a thing that was only mentally reserved to the white race, maybe. When you talk about King Solomon, when you talk about King David, you want to think them white. We want the children of Africa to discover that they are descendants from a race that gave the world sense, culture, and philosophy, and science. This is partly what we want to do, because some intelligent wise men have said, seeing is believing. And people of African descent in the diaspora need to see and begin to believe in their own grandeur. That's one. Secondly, Antigua is a very small island, but when it begins to know that it's part of a big mass of people in the world, that's good boosting to their own sense of ego. Because when you think you're nothing, if you have been taught to believe you're nothing and inferior, and indeed, genetically a slave race, that's bad on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
AIDO wants to take people from Africa at the moment when the nation of Antigua and Barbuda is celebrating emancipation. And we will say on the ground that, interestingly, it was children of Africa in the diaspora that emancipated themselves from slavery in 1803-04 on the island called Haiti. Toussaint Louverture fought off those that wanted to keep them under slavery. And Africa came to undergo colonialism And again, children of Africa in the diaspora, like Antigua, led the thought of Pan-Africanism and the liberation. And so we want to take Africans to Antigua for the Africans to realize that we've got our cousins, our own sisters and brothers. This is going to boost a sense of cultural pride, a sense of pride in the pigmentation nature has given you. Because when you're looked down upon or derided because your skin has melanin, a confession of idiocy for whoever does that, and yet you feel, yes, you're not as good as others. This is when we have people meet from the continent and our brothers and sisters in Antigua, that will be a morale booster. Belonging to a great family, knowing that your race has never been. In actual fact, history shows that many princes, many kings that were not submitting to the hunters of slavers were either killed or captured and taken as slaves. So when you speak of royal children in the diaspora, you people come from very special breeds of humanity. But for 400 years, this has been sidelined, swept under the carpet, and AIDO is coming to try and revive this sense of dignity, and it should lead to closer relations between the people of the Caribbean and their brothers and sisters on the continent. I suppose that really goes far enough to explain what AIDO is aiming at. Revive cultural pride, revive self-dignity and consciousness and pride. And that leads to achievement. We intend to go as far as the sky goes, beyond the clouds, beyond where the eagles go. AIDO is not going to stop next door. We're going far. And Antigua, to an average African child, is an unknown place. It's like the moon. We will take the royals there. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Do you have any questions for His Excellency Omar?
Well, I think I would want to ask him to briefly, as he did on emancipation, say something about the idea of a retrospective justice or reparations. Could you please say something about this? Because Africans on the continent, we may not quite be familiar with the idea and what you think we should know about emancipation.
About reparations.
The reparations, I beg your pardon. Yes,
reparations.
reparations.
I am one of the 3 vice chairs of the Caricom Reparations Commission. And it is a commission that was established by heads of government back in 2013, 2014, to pursue reparations from the European countries that were guilty of enslaving African people, to seek reparations from them for the slave trade, for slavery, and also for the genocide of indigenous people that they met here in the Caribbean after the visits of Christopher Columbus, etc., after he sailed to America. Now, the policy and the practice of reparatory justice, interestingly, has been a feature of European jurisdiction and jurisprudence for over 200 years. It is not internationally, it is not a new concept, it is not new to us, nor is it new to Europe, from whom we seek reparations for, as I said before, for slavery, for the slave trade, and for the genocide of indigenous people. We make the case that the primary harm and the suffering experienced by the victims of that crime of slavery, essentially that harm and suffering is the primary cause of underdevelopment, of developmental failures here in the Caribbean. And therefore, our attempt is, well, two things happen in this whole process. One is that reparations essentially will take various forms. It will take forms of restitution. It may take forms of compensation, forms of rehabilitation, the satisfaction for those who endured the suffering. Importantly for us, it's we call for some guarantee of non-repetition of those crimes against African people. So for the reparations process, we need to do two things. We need to identify the crime, and we need to identify the areas of ongoing suffering and harm from the crime. And this is what we have done here in the Caribbean. The crime, enslaving of Africans, the kidnapping of Africans from the continent, bringing them here to the Caribbean, having them endure for hundreds of years the conditions of slavery. So we have identified the crime clearly. And in terms of our modern politics, we have identified the areas where the suffering and harm from that crime continue to impact in terms of underdevelopment or non-development here in the Caribbean society. And so the heads of government of this region brought together the heads of national reparations commissions to form the Caricom Reparations Commission. And we have embarked since then. It's now heading up to 7, 8, 9, 10 years of work that does a couple of things. It promotes the advocacy for the idea and the understanding of reparations, the historical importance of reparations, that advocacy to our people. And externally, we are moving towards ensuring that this struggle for reparation becomes a global struggle. Because clearly there is automatic resistance from European countries for the thought of having to pay Africans in the diaspora, and I guess certainly in North America, depending on how those circumstances turn out, to pay reparations for the crimes that they have committed. They have resisted. They have always resisted, and in many ways, part of the resistance is that it happened a long time ago and we should forget it. Or the one that is again creeping back into the international narrative, this horrible idea that Africans were the ones who sold Africans to Europeans, and that horrible attempt to transfer the responsibility for European slavery, to transfer that to African, that the agency in it, the important agency in it is African. And this, of course, we rebuff, we reject completely, because we understand how that happened and what happened on the continent. And we're also looking forward towards African voices making that point even more clearly and more strongly than we can have. So internationally, we are moving towards the global understanding, a global movement for reparations for African people here in the diaspora. And so our relationships, our linkages with reparations commissions in the United States, in Europe, and now expanding into Africa, a very, very important part of our work. Our heads of government, we as a commission report to a committee of heads of government across this region, and our heads of government themselves have become extremely strong and extremely vocal in making this call internationally for reparations. I think importantly also, because in struggles of this nature, it is quite easy to get downhearted in a way if things are not happening as quickly as you in your own mind imagine that they would have happened. But we are seeing major movements in the thinking or in the responses of Europe to our call for reparations. Only quite recently, Prince Charles, future monarch of the United Kingdom, made a statement at the Heads of Government Conference in Rwanda, a statement that said that the conversation about the horrors and the indignity and the crime of slavery is a conversation whose time has come. Now, this is the closest we have heard any important person in Europe come to that understanding, because the conversations about the wrongs of slavery are conversations about the right of reparations. And this is where we're at this point in time. We also experiencing interventions from corporate Europe and in this matter. Only a few days ago, we have had the head of a major telecom community intervening and setting up and financing a serious mechanism for establishing a funding arrangement, a financing arrangement through which reparatory funds can be channeled to this region. And just to bring this to an end, at our end of it, our reparations claim, unlike, let's say, the legacy claims that Queen Aminata may be familiar with in the United States, where there is talk about payment to individuals and individual families, etc. Our view here in the Caribbean is of a development plan that addresses the development deficiencies here in the region. And so we have identified those areas where there is development deficiency in education, in health. We talk about things like development programs for the remaining indigenous peoples in this region who have survived the genocide placed on them. We're talking about cultural and heritage issues. We're talking about transfer of technology. We're talking about debt cancellation. So that what we did is that we looked at the Caribbean. What are the areas where we have development deficiencies? Can we attach these deficiencies? Can we say that they were caused, important in terms of reparations, that they were caused by the crime committed against our people? And that is what we have done and have identified those areas. This is what we call our Caricom, our CRC 10-point plan for reparatory justice. That is essentially the theoretical framework within which we operate.
Your Excellency Ambassador Dorbrene Omade, your explanation, your elucidation of the notion of reparations is unequaled for many people who only hear about it, and for distance and ignorance combining, had decided not to pay real attention to it. I don't know how many minutes we still have. I would just say the following things. We shall not be put off or discouraged because of the weight of the challenge you're lifting. The African proverb is that when you plant a mahogany tree, you would be naive to think you'll have the fruit yourself, but you plant it. One generation will water it. Another generation will probably help it grow and weed the troubles that would be around. And maybe a fourth generation will have the wood and the timber and sit on the chairs made of that mahogany tree. So your perspective is scientifically African. We salute that. Secondly, we know the little bit that we know on the theme of reparations, that other societies in recent history were subjected to cruelty comparable to what the children of Africa suffered for 400 years. We know that Germany has had to pay some compensation, reparations in a way, after the unfortunate gas chamber phenomenon during the Second World War. We also know that the very first Black Republic, which caused, during the effort of war, losses to France, had reparations imposed on it to the extent of wrecking it as a country.
That's
To
right.
this day, that country hasn't healed from the deprivation. We know also that Japan raised issues following the Nagasaki and
The incarceration of Japanese in the United States just
From
before
World War II.
World War II.
right, and people have spoken, and I think I remember I saw that being done in very good faith. There is no reason, therefore, for anybody, particularly on the African continent, not to get interested and, where necessary, to add a voice to the voice of the children that descend from the unfortunate grandfathers that died for the autochthones, the autochthone population that was on those islands. So the message you're sending here is of great value to humanity. It isn't only helpful to people of African descent in the world. We have human friends, philanthropists, men and women in Europe, in Asia, with a heart. I personally knew the friendship between late Bishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. Those two people were complementary. One doesn't have to belong to the same society, because race is one. The race, we're all humans, but we tend to be divided up through miseducation, and you're helping to miseducate. And I appreciate your message on that. I don't know whether Queen Aminata has another invitation to you to say something towards the end of our time.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Namboka. I just wanted to add to what you said about the Jewish nation and the Japanese nation receiving reparations. Let's not also forget Native Americans here in the United States
That's right.
are still receiving reparations to this very day about the Holocaust that happened with their people here. They get free medical, they get housing, and here recently in the state of Arizona, they now are allowed to get free education at the university level. So those things are ongoing. So the argument that that was a long time ago and all these things, arguments that people make, has really been made to be not relevant anymore, because there are groups of people who their Holocaust happened hundreds of years ago and they're still getting reparations to this
That's right.
day.
That's
So let's just be equitable to all people on the planet and make it right. So thank you for sharing that information. And thank you, Your Excellency Omarde, for your very insightful sharing of your thoughts on the benefits of the Royal Pilgrimage Initiative and the importance of reparations and why you think it's relevant today. Would you please share with our audience your 2-minute closing remarks?
Well, I would just like to make the connection across the Atlantic Sea about the reparations issue, because many of us, even many of us in the struggle today, tend not to pay much attention to the fact that perhaps the modern call for reparations came out of Africa itself, came out of the work of Chief Ambiola and connections with the African Union, that they established a committee of eminent persons to look at reparations for Africa and the diaspora. And so we're going back to mid-1980s, 1990s. Dates always mix me up. So I won't be specific, but I think we're in the 1990s. The work of the Organization of African Unity and the work of Chief Abiola and the establishment of a committee of eminent persons to look at reparations. And just in closing on this whole reparations theme is that the demands made then are not particularly different to the demands that we are making now. They're demands that talk about compensation. They're demands that talk about the return of stolen goods and stolen articles, the ideas of compensation and capital transfer. There's the additional call of the reordering of international relationships, who sits on the United Nations committees, etc., where we have seen African and African countries here in the region excluded from these things. And so the call is a linked call between the continent, certainly between the Caribbean, between African people, wherever they are. And this is what I think the potential of that makes it a major global force against Europe. And we're really looking forward to completing or continuing the connections that have been established between our political leadership in terms of an African Caricom summit that took place last year, in terms of a continuation and a declaration of a holiday on September 7th, known as an African Caricom Day, that our political leaders are involved, our cultural leaders are totally involved in this movement. And we see programs of this nature, Roots of Africa, and we see the AIDO, the relationships that we have developed with AIDO as part of this process. And it's all about reestablishing the dignity and the freedom of the African personality, wherever he or she is.
Thank you very much. You're so very on point with everything that you just said in that statement. It was very impactful and very detailed and very accurate and on point. Thank you so very much for that. Your Excellency, Ambassador Namboka, please share with us your 2-minute closing remarks.
Thank you very much again, Queen Aminata. Again, I will begin by thanking Ambassador Dorbrene E as a son of Africa, growing up in the Caribbean region, and so clear and attached to the parents, to the brothers, to the kinsmen. We think the message is very pertinent. It's the right message today. Actually, what we are talking about here isn't against any society. It is a cause that we have to get the rest of the world appreciate as a just cause. It was just a matter of putting it on the table and conducting the discussions as people that are conscious of what we have today, the decade declared by the United Nations for people of African descent. The United Nations is the global biggest organization for all humans. And it is the UN which said, this is the decade of people of African descent. And AIDO says, let's do something. We can't be sitting and watching. So we want to take people from the continent, go shake hands, learn, just like we are learning here from someone from Africa's historical diaspora. Because we as AIDO realize that when we talk about African diaspora, there is the historical people that Ambassador Dorbrene Domade descends from, people from whom Queen Aminata descends from. Nobody can guess you're not Africans, but you're Africans, but you are taken not to be Africans, because when somebody says, what's your country of origin? Now, I've said country, then you say Antigua. And then you say the United States of America, but you're Africans.
Oh,
That's what the world to realize, that you could be on the moon, you'll still be an American. You could be on Mars, you'll still be British. So our African brothers and sisters, wherever you are, don't go by the labels stuck on your shoulders. You are African. That would be my real message. We are in this together as humanity, Ubuntu, that which makes us one human race. And I think from here we shall succeed. We will be heard by those that have an open heart. And Africa will be a friend and a brother for everybody. That's why the great Africans never created colonies, but they went far. They visited all the surface of the earth, but they never left slaves or dependencies. They just went, saw, and got back. And we have Terracotta. We've got the Omel. In Mexico, they found things that trace African explorers and travelers 3,000 years before Christopher Columbus even knew how to swim. So I think we're getting close to something that will bring the world closer, always with a bit of humor, because Africans enjoy doing serious business with a smile. And so we're going to stop here. Thank you for allowing me some 2 minutes. I don't want to overshoot. Be well, be blessed.
Thank you, Ambassador, Your Excellency, Ambassador Namboka, for joining me today and helping to host today's program. And thank you to our very special guest, His Excellency Dorbrene Omarde, for joining us today on Roots of Africa and sharing your extensive knowledge with us. Tickets to the summit are available on idonetwork.org. Please visit the website to learn more about the summit and all it has to offer. Also, please remember to subscribe to the Roots of Africa Facebook page and AIDO YouTube channel and click on the notifications bell so that you'll be notified each time AIDO uploads a new video or goes live. Until we meet again, Ashe.
Ashe.
Bye.
I know.
We are Aidoers.
I know.